Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Universal Pathways, a show brought to viewers worldwide right here on Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Millennium News 24. Viewers can download the Millennium TV News app from their iPhone store and Google Play Store for all Android devices. You can also watch us live on Roku, Apple TV, all smart TVs, as well as Amazon Fire TV, Horizon Satellite, and Blu-ray. Horizon Satellite Beyond Boundaries, or watch us live on Millennium News 24 Facebook page or on our website at www.millenniumtvnews.com. Again, I'm your host, Curtis Douglas Ill, and today I have the honor to be in the studio with Ariel Eustache Ill. How you doing, beloved?
Doing well, thank you.
She's a psychotherapist out of Long Island, and it's truly an honor to be here with you. Again, this show is a show that gets and speak to viewers from a universal perspective. The idea is to be able to invoke conversations from our life experience that could be beneficial to those that are listening, locally and internationally as well. So with that being said, my good sister and our guest today, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I'm Ariel. No fancy titles, really. Most people know me as a sister. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. As you said, I have my licensed master in social work. I'm a student of life and a Moorish American.
Okay.
That's really it.
Pretty direct, to the point. With that being said, I know that a lot of times when people speak to us, they might not think that title is important. But for some, if you don't have a title, they really would not listen to you, right?
Fair.
So I know that you have a master's degree.
Correct.
What was it? Penn State undergrad, Fordham
Fordham
grad?
Yes, I got my graduate degree from Fordham University in 2022.
Okay.
In social work.
All right. And what was it like at Penn State?
Penn State.
Pennsylvania University?
Oh, LaSalle University.
LaSalle University.
Yes.
Thank you for that correction.
No problem. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology at LaSalle University. Just being away from home for the first time definitely felt refreshing. I got to explore a different part of myself. I was able to become more independent and explore how I am independent of my family as well.
Yes.
The psychology curriculum that I learned, it was insightful, but I feel that social work took it to another level. I feel like a lot of the reflection that I did within myself helped me learn human psychology more than the textbook stuff did. Okay.
That's a very good point. Hands-on experience as opposed to textbook knowledge.
Correct. Life is the best teacher, as they say.
Yes, indeed. So, do you have any brothers, sisters? I mean, what's the background? Just kind of looking to get an idea. What's the background of your family structure going to college?
Yes.
And then gathering that life experience now to be in a setting where you're now helping people socially from a psychotherapist perspective. So what's your background like at home?
So my parents, they've been married for 30 going on 31 years. I have an older brother who's 2 years older than me. My interest in psychology really just came from me being curious about my own behaviors as well as others. I've always been an introspective type of person, but I'd say that my self-concept wasn't really developed until my 20s, but I always had like a natural curiosity about why I do the things that I do, why people do the things that they do. So that led me to naturally study psychology. I wanted to go into mental health counseling for my graduate degree afterward, but my mom encouraged doing social work because she said it's more broad and more general and that it could lead down more avenues. So I chose social work because it does allow me to do psychotherapy as well. And social work, the different domains in it, I realized that mental health counseling was the one that called me the most. And I feel that through my practice with others, I was able to learn more about humanity, working with the different demographics that I do. Also learn more about myself and my capabilities to help people. But I always feel like I've been destined to be of service and help others.
Wow. Mental health. It's an interesting word, mental and health.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying some of our people mentally are not quite stable? Is that a safe assumption to make?
A lot of people that I work with are not mentally stable.
Okay. Can you?
I'm helping them be mentally stable.
Can you just go a little bit more into that for us, so the viewer can have an idea? Here in North America, you're working out of Long Island, but here in North America, the whole idea of the social worker field, okay, helping ones to be able to adjust mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You know, what's the condition that's now need for the role? What is the need that's being met here? What's the condition of those people? What's the demographics like?
I see. Well, I would like to start with how I even got into this role within myself.
Yes.
So I was considered what you call mentally unstable at a certain point in my life. So I don't necessarily like to label them as that.
Okay.
But let's just say throughout my entire adolescence, I've always felt that I always felt like a misfit. I always felt like the way that I was thinking wasn't the right normal way. I didn't know what normal was. And as a result, I've always felt like anxiety, worry, but I never vocalized that to any of my relatives. I kind of just dealt with it. I just thought it was my normal and that I was weird.
Uh-huh.
And then when I was away at university, I reached a point where I was sick and tired of feeling that way.
Uh-huh.
I was like, there has to be better. Like, there's no way that I'm feeling like this. Like, constantly worried, constantly under stress. Like, I just want to be calm. Like, I see people, granted, like, you don't know people's background and what they're experiencing, but I always just felt like other people were tapped into something that I wasn't tapped into. Mm-hmm. So on one of the breaks that I had from school, I told my mom and dad, you know, I feel anxious. And they asked me why. And I just said, I don't know. You know, they're like, you have a roof over your head. You're away at university. Like, you have life well. Like, you know, why are you anxious? And I just said, I don't know. It's not necessarily caused by anything. I just feel that way.
Yes.
So, you know, Haitians don't believe in medication. I didn't really necessarily want to be on medication, just personally. They also didn't have any therapy resources. Yes. I realized that as a therapist, I could have benefited from seeing one at the time, but I'd say that it wasn't as popular at the time. Okay. So what my mom ended up doing was giving me a book called The Positive Thinker by Alice Potter. Wow. And it was a very, very like introductory level book to introducing that you control your thoughts based on what you tell yourself. Like, how you feel is based on what you think. It's literally just like that thought, feeling, behavior sort of triangle that we know in cognitive behavioral therapy, but it was a very, very basic way of explaining that. So that caused me to reflect on what I was thinking that was causing me to feel anxious. And I realized that it was a lot of negative self-talk. It was a lot of criticism of myself and others. And I'm like, well, no wonder why I don't feel good, because I'm constantly having this negative internal conversation. Yes. So I started to choose. I was like, you know what? Let me choose what I want to think. Like, what I'm thinking is not helping me. Let me choose thoughts that can actually help me feel better. So I started doing that. I also started meditating at that time as well, because when I was doing more research into introspection, they said meditation can also help you control the way you think more and detach from those negative thought patterns. So I started using an app called Headspace, where I started with 10 minutes of a guided meditation. And I was no longer scared of my thoughts. I allowed them to just come and go and realize that my brain was just on a pattern of negative thoughts that I've thought for years. Like, it's not really real. It's just kind of redundant because it's so used to that. But then when I started thinking new thoughts, I was less attached to the negative thoughts. Got it. It was just like, okay, these don't even mean anything anymore because I'm starting to choose these thoughts that now help me. So doing the work and realizing that I was able to improve my reality led me to want to help people do the same. But I know that it's not going to be that easy for other people because trauma is a factor and people can't just overcome those negative feelings as easily as I did. For me, it was what I was telling myself was based on lies, and the literature did help me just reconsider all of those things and not take it as seriously. Because no one teaches you how to think. They tell you to go to school, they tell you to learn this curriculum, get good grades, but how do you think in a way that works for you? Especially when we're in a society that's meant to destroy our happiness. So that's where it all started. It led me to help others do the same. Everyone's journey is different, so the level of help that I have to give others in my work is different, but it is rewarding at the end of the day.
Beautiful. You said a lot, and some very great points for our listening audience, and the significance about what you're saying from a universal perspective. Unfortunately, at times, we might feel secluded because we don't have a frame of reference, right? So I like the fact that you corrected the whole idea, how you view those who you work with from a mental perspective, very positive in just lifting just the overall perspective, how we view others, more so from a beneficial perspective versus issuing labels. So we know that labels can be very detrimental. An entire society, nation of people have been mislabeled, whether it be Black, Negro, colored. These labels were placed on indigenous people, right? People who are indigenous right here to these North America. For instance, the Black, colored, etc. are truly Moorish Americans here in North America, but they're not aware of that. So the mental component is important, because even Prophet Noble Jamalu came to the Moors and Asiatics in America, reminding them that they're not Negro, Black, or colored. So he said slavery today is mental. So it's interesting that you felt this anxiety.
Yes.
So everybody's touched by that mental slavery today, because like you said, you were not taught how to think.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, why would anyone living in a colonized regime or a colonized imperial type society influenced be taught by the very one who conquered them how to think?
Right.
Because by thinking, you actually get out of the box today, which is mental, right? So the physical shackles are not there, but the mental shackles are.
Yes.
So as a young lady, you start to feel that.
Yes.
And then you thought it was something wrong with you. Interestingly enough, right?
My perspective did get more refined over the course of the years, where I realized like the miseducation and being taught who we are by the oppressed does make you feel that underdeveloped, poor self-concept, Even though my parents are proud Haitians, I never necessarily felt like a proud Haitian, because when I went to school, like in grade school, we used to get teased for being Haitian because we're the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Wow. My dad always told me and my brother, like, we're not African American. Like, those people are different from us. Like, that's not who we are, because like their history is different from our history. Haitians, they have a different history than the American Africans do. And so when I went to school, we all look alike, they're all doing cool things. I kind of want to assimilate to how they are being. But then at the same time, I felt like a misfit because I wasn't as flashy as they were. Like, we had different values. I spoke differently than they did. I ate differently. My mom used to prepare us lunch. We didn't eat school lunch. So I always felt like outcasted and weird from a really young age. And so the anxiety of that, mixed with the anxiety of like just trying to adult after leaving high school, going into college, I felt that my self-concept needed like reconstruction.
Wow. Interesting, very significant points that I really want to touch on as it pertains to what you're saying. Because you mentioned a nationality, right? To be Haitian, you have a nationality, right? And then they understood that they were not African Americans, which I've said it before, that is a name given to ones here by Jesse Jackson, right? And no knock on Jesse Jackson, but it was a name given to a group of people. No one sat down and traced the people back to their lineage and said, rightfully so, who are they? What's the descendant nature? Prophet Noble Jawali did that. He had the information. He did that. He corrected that. So now we have our children who are going into schools that are primarily geared and set up by the oppressor in this instance, right? Because these are people who are now prisoners in their own land. So we see a condition that exists, and that's the need now for the mental correction.
Yes.
Which brings in the type of work that you're doing. And it's a beautiful thing that you having those roots and now start to really find those roots of self. First knowing yourself to now go and help others to be able to now heal. So that's a beautiful demonstration. I want to build upon that a little bit more once we come back from this commercial. So we're going to take a minute and go to this commercial. I am Curtis Douglas Ill, This is Universal Pathway. I'm here today with Ariel Eustache Hill. We'll be right back after this commercial.
Hello viewers, you are watching Millennium News 24. America and global villages seen to America independence built by immigrants, manufacturers, roads, highways, educations, healthcare, IT, scientists, space, business development to all thousands of multimedia and all major social media platforms and news network in America. Millennium News 24, one of truthfully news networks in America and global news organizations. Please watch, follow and subscribe. We are in iOS and Android devices, Roku, Amazon, Apple devices, all smart TV, globally Horizon satellite, social media Millennium News 24, Millennium TV 24. Website www.millenniumnews24.com and www.millenniumtv24.com. Thank you.
Welcome back to Universal Pathways. I'm Curtis Lux-Ill. I'm your host, and today I'm in the studio with Ariel Eustache Hill. It's truly an honor to really be speaking with you. You're very young, and it looks like our future is very bright. The reason being, we have somebody who first had to understand herself as she now chooses a career to better help people who first look like you. So let me just honor you in saying that it's truly an honor to see you find that path to truly be more universal appealing, not only to your own people, whether it be Haitians from Haiti or even Haitians growing up here in America. And also, I'm sure your parents must be truly proud of you, seeing that you're taking what they gave you and you're also now trying to find yourself within society to be a better version of you, to also interact and help others not to hopefully go through what it is that you experience. No one should ever feel weird, interacting with other children. No one should feel like they're odd in any way. So the goal of shows like this and the network itself is to help the world at large to know that we have a commonality as human beings, and we need to find ways in which we can honor each other and not let others now feel like they're less than.
Right.
So any oppressive regime is no different from someone coming to a schoolyard and being a bully, right? We know that the bully might have physical strength, but what happened as people become better thinkers, they now start to now figure out how to deal with the issue of bullies, right? And it's the same way we're seeing from hearing what you're saying right now, thinking. Schools don't necessarily teach you how to think, they teach you how to do a job, right? So that's a part of the whole slave regime. And there's nothing wrong with being able to now know the program and the protocol, how to carry out one's work if one contract with different establishment. But it's very important to know the uniqueness that you bring to the circle and be appreciated as a part of that human family. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah.
So I just want to build upon that a little bit. You mentioned some solutions, and I was going to ask you these questions, but you already kind of went into it. Definitely into the same headspace. And interestingly, you mentioned the app Headspace.
Yes.
Right? Interesting. So whoever named that app, kudos to you all, because literally head point to the thinking, and we need to be better thinkers. So you receive some assistance from that. But you also mentioned a book, because I was going to ask you, who are some of the authors that have influenced the way that you think, and you've already kind of gone into that. So if you don't just kind of like, touch on Headspace a little bit, so viewers who might be in similar situation that you speak about can now see that they have some solutions out there, along with repeat that author you mentioned and others, and great advice from your mother as well, just pointing you to what? To be a reader.
Yeah.
It is said that if you want to hide things from people that look like me, and you put it in a book.
Yeah.
So clearly your mother is a reader, and she's passing on that legacy to you as a reader, and hopefully you'll continue that legacy and passing on to children as well, that you might influence directly and indirectly. So why don't you just elaborate on the app and those books?
Definitely. I do love that the app is called Headspace as well, because I feel that after using it to meditate and just meditating in general, I realized that I did have more space in my mind, like more clarity.
Yes.
So instead of the chatter and the noise, I felt that calmness every now and then. I'm like, oh, okay, like I can choose what I want to. It doesn't feel chaotic.
Yes.
So Headspace gave me headspace.
Literally.
And as it pertains to the authors, Alice Potter was one of the first who I was introduced to. Then that led me to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I recommend that book to everyone.
I read that book as well. Yes.
It's very spiritually adept.
Yes, it is.
But it definitely hones in on like your consciousness versus your ego. So I feel that all people deserve to know that dyad within themselves. Dr. Joe Dispenza, his work is really great too. If you are not a big reader, he also does have just talks on YouTube where he goes in depth about some of the concepts that have helped him and help other people that he's worked with as well. But those are the top 3 authors that I'd say has helped me significantly.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, just being more mindful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness, being aware of one's space. We hear that echo in an entire movement.
Mm-hmm.
This is a new era of time now.
Mm-hmm.
So to now know that we're in now time, it gives people access to solutions. And as thinker, the only place that we can really change the future is by what we do in the present moment.
Right.
The decisions. Right. And you mentioned choices, right?
Yeah.
So now being able to make choices, even in your own mind, those negative chatters that you were having before. So some of your clients today and children and others hearing this might be having negative chatters in their mind. And then you now start to see the need to make better choices. Mm-hmm. So you are now making substitute by what you are now reading. Mm-hmm. You were making the headspace by creating space. Mm-hmm. You are now forgiving yourself and now start to recreate or better yet unfold who you truly are.
Yeah.
No longer listening to, you mentioned lies about yourself. Mm-hmm. Why do you think people would deliberately tell lies to themselves? Where do you think that's coming from as a psychotherapist?
Before we get into that, I did want to get into what you said about forgiving myself.
Yes.
Because that was a big theme when I first discovered who I was becoming. It's easy to beat yourself up for having lived and thought a certain way in the past, but yes. I definitely practiced a level of self-compassion for what I didn't know before, because I realized that I needed to go through everything that I did for those 20 years in order for this to unfold. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to touch on forgiveness.
Definitely.
And can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Pretty much the question has more to do with, you know what, now I'm losing my train of thought. In essence, we kind of touch base on forgiveness, but you know what? In keeping it simple, let's go this route. We mentioned thinking and solutions and her being able to forgive herself as opposed to embracing negativity about self. What I've seen that is done, it has molded you into somebody who's better ready to take on the world, right? So in being able to better take on the world, some of the roles we do that in is through our job, like you're now doing, as well as societal type groups. And with that being said, you recently came back from Mexico.
Yes.
You went with your fiance.
Yes.
You want to speak about that a little bit?
The Mexico trip? Or?
Yes. No, just the whole idea, because what I'm building upon at this point is, that's what I said, I don't really necessarily, you mentioned the forgiveness. So if that's really the focus of the point, then sometimes we just have to move on to the next phase.
I got you.
And the next phase that I'm seeing where your whole life becomes very beneficial as an example is the fact that congratulations on being engaged. Congratulations on, going into that aspect of yourself now where you're actually willing to work with someone else as a mate to one day directly influence children as opposed to indirectly through the job. Right. So that's what I said. I wanted to speak to that a little bit as a young lady who's now engaged, moving and contributing to society in a different ways, because now ones are not just seeing you individually, they're going to see you collectively as a team. So just speak to who's your fiance, how did you meet, And what made him that special guy?
I see. Well, yes, my fiance is Kamali Saeed El.
Okay.
I love him very much. We met back in 2019. We actually met on a dating app called Hinge.
Another app.
Another app. I love apps.
This is the app generation.
Yes.
So I'm hearing you. We got to get some apps to really influence, because the minds are looking at apps. So go ahead, please.
And I have to say, like, on apps, there's only a level of depth that you can reach. So obviously, like, you take it offline, you speak on the phone. And our initial phone conversation was really deep. Like, we spoke for about 5 or 6 hours. I spoke to him in depth about just the unfolding of my journey and like overcoming ego and knowledge of self, even though it was a little underdeveloped at the time still.
Yes.
That's still something that him and I related on naturally. Okay. So when we met and we had like deep conversations, I feel like that was really a catalyst for the depth of our relationship even more. Him and I were also in alignment with values and like wellness and overcoming our negative traits to be like the best version of ourselves. Like, we're both dedicated to becoming better versions for ourselves, not only for each other, but just for everyone around us. And he always emphasizes communication and understanding. And I feel that communication and understanding are literally the two things that can drive two people apart in a partnership. But we are very intentional about communication and understanding within each other. So I couldn't be more grateful to call him my fiance and take the next step with him.
Okay, so why did y'all choose Mexico? Recent vacation. Any specific reason why Mexico?
Well, venues in New York are too expensive, number one. He has some family in Florida too, so we figured that it would be easier for them to get to Mexico. I always wanted a beach wedding. Okay. He was open to a beach wedding. I just thought that it was beautiful and divine and serene, and we're just drawn to Mexico because of the proximity. A lot of people can come because it's right in our backyard.
So a waterfront beach wedding in Mexico. Wow, that sounds great.
Right?
Any specific type themes?
Well, we were thinking like lavender, gold, and white.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And for those who might not be aware, also, you're a Moorish American.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And he too is a Moorish American, right?
Yes.
And so on that day, is it going to be like a Moorish American type theme wedding?
It will be as Moorish Americans, it will be a Moorish American wedding, given that we are.
Okay.
The theme is really us. So yes.
All right. Just putting that out there, that there's different type of weddings.
Yeah.
And marital obligations. So again, honors to, just you being able to take that leap.
Thank you.
There's a lot of young ladies such as yourself. They've gone to college. They possibly also have a master's degree. Some probably even gone on to PhD. But when it comes to relationships, they're not in that headspace where they would want to make that commitment. What advice would you give to anyone who's have a similar perspective where, trust might have been an issue. They might have been having those negative dialogue with themselves. They had to forgive themselves. And they might be in a relationship, but for whatever reason, they're not able to really make that commitment. What advice would you give to them? And for the ones who do make that commitment, what advice would you give to them as well?
For those who are afraid to make the commitment, I'd say don't be afraid to be vulnerable, because I feel that deep relationships require a level of vulnerability. What worked for me personally, not saying this will work for everyone, but being vulnerable with myself, with the good, the bad, the ugly, made me come as I am in the relationship. So I didn't really feel like I had anything to hide. I also am an optimistic person. So if he wasn't the one for me, I knew that I would find my one. So naturally, I'm wired that way because I've always felt destined to be a wife. That's always just what I wanted for myself. And for women who are on their way to the altar or are in a committed relationship, definitely refine your communication and understanding of one another. Try to get on the same page as much as possible. And what I've learned is that relationships are about adapting to each other. So, don't get stuck in your way. Try to adapt to how your partner is, their preferences, and they should be doing the same for you as well. But communicating through that is very important.
Well said. So communication, understanding. Would you say that you growing up in a household that had both mother and father there played a role why you said you were always destined to be one? Do you think that plays a big part of it?
I think so. I did have positive examples just of wife titles in my life. Not necessarily the healthiest of relationships, but it's sort of expected for women to be a wife and a mother.
Yes.
And I've always wanted that for myself too. It's just something that's always in alignment with my future.
Okay.
Because like children are a given. Like I've always wanted to have children, and I don't want to have children out of wedlock. So inherently a wife after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you know that even the idea of not having children out of wedlock have to do with some spiritual connection?
Mm-hmm.
So subconsciously, there's a part of a culture that's rooted in you that speaks to, for men and women to come together, there needs to be some kind of moral value.
Right.
You know what I mean? As
Right.
opposed to, in other words, what comes with a relationship, marriage, for instance, it's not just physical connection for the sake of pleasure, but it has more to do with children,
Mm-hmm.
rearing children, and the foundation and standard long-term commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So that innate aspect to say children not out of wedlock, because typically the children outside of wedlock is what a lot of what you mentioned. In other words, if there's no true strong commitment, you have those anxieties.
Yes.
You
yes.
have those negative chatter.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And something that's always been a deal breaker for me. I've always wanted to feel safe in a relationship. Like anytime I felt like someone could cheat on me or, do something that would make me feel insecure, like it just made me feel so unsettled. And my fiance, he's been very reaffirming about certain things. So it's made me feel safe in the relationship. And I feel that for any woman who is struggling with finding the right kind of mate, I feel that feeling safe in their presence, despite what they say, but just feeling safe, like energetically in their presence, is an indicator of them being a good partner in the long term.
Wow. Well, this is a lot about Brother Kamal.
Honors to him.
Yes, honors indeed. Which kind of goes to my next question. I'd ask, what was it about Kamal that made you say yes?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that stood out significantly with him
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to others? I
feel that he was very serious very early, not in terms of like wanting to call me his girlfriend very early, but he wasn't about the games. I could tell I'm very perceptive, if you will, when it comes to people. So his vibe just made me feel so reassured, and that he's always made himself. He's made me a priority, I'd say.
Good. And
like helping and doing things. And I was just like, you know what? Like I actually love that he's selfless and has a heart as big as he does. And so, yeah, that was really it. And I was like, he's my first real relationship. Like there's people who I've dealt with in the past, but it wasn't to this degree. But Kamal, he's a relationship kind of guy. And I've learned a lot from him in a relationship on how to be better and how to make those concessions like healthily when you have to, and constantly adapt to each other. I just feel like he's a relationship natural. Granted, there are things that he's worked on himself, but I feel that there's a lot that I've learned from him as far as being a partner.
Wow. That's beautiful. The reason why I'm kind of just owning in on relationship and just advice to young lady and even men as well, others that might be going through similar scenario. Why is that significant? Why is that important? It has a lot because of what comes by way of relationship. Children. You said you always knew you wanted to be a wife, right? And then we start to see how children interact in society. So the foundation and the background matters. So who we choose to be our mate determine nations, future forward.
Yeah.
Because that man and wife is literally the village. That's the original Garden of Eden. That's the holy city of Mecca. In the true sense of the word. In other words, if a man and a woman did not get together and decide to have children, all these religion, all these school of thoughts would not be. So it really comes back to the household.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And communication and understanding. Those two words that you said you two are big upon, those are gems. So honors to you both for discovering those gems very early. And for those who are listening, really and truly, if the communication is bad, if the understanding is bad, these are telltale signs that later on, even though you might be partaking in certain activities now, the consequences of it until those things are addressed sincerely can be detrimental. And to bring children into those situations is just a bad, deal.
Right.
Because the children suffer because they're not in those early years where they need to develop. And if the mother and father still needs development, we have an issue.
Yes. A conundrum, yes. But I'd say that I've developed from that because my parents served as an example. It's worked with whatever they have going on between them has worked for them. But I was able to take what works for me and what doesn't work for me from their relationship. So even if, the communication or understanding is difficult, it gives you insight into why it is so important to have that.
Good. And let me say this, and by no means for anyone who's listening, if you have difficulties in understanding and difficulty even in communication, let me expound a little bit. It's your persistence to work with each other. Yes. Like you said, to forgive.
Yes.
Right? People don't forget, truth be told, but to forgive, it's like a rubber band. You have to be able to stretch and come back together.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be flexible. If not, you're going to break.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we know you mentioned the word trauma earlier, and we as a people have been through a lot of trauma.
Yes.
Coming out of slavery, physical slavery, is trauma for any group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then, like you said, if you have a nation of people, for instance, the Haitians, who been misunderstood, and I'll just say it that way, misunderstood, because come back to what? Communication.
Right.
So not only do we not communicate as individuals, now you see nations can behave the same way children would behave if the children come from a household that's not quite able to explain some of these differences that we might be interacting with in society.
Yeah.
So it always come back to the home to be able to explain certain interaction, the whys, the how, the where, the when. So history becomes crucial because now you start to see maybe someone is holding on to something and they did not quite forgive.
Right.
It's not about forgetting, because we need to remember our history. And sometimes people do forget and they don't quite see why somebody's behaving the way they are behaving.
Right. I do feel like it's important for most people to be trauma informed, because a lot of people's behavior is just a reflection on their experiences.
Yes. And slavery is a huge trauma, because now it sits mentally. And that's why even what you do as a psychotherapist is so important to our children. So again, like I said, honors to you for going into that field, because you're bringing solutions. And not only that too, you made sure that you yourself was right before you go into, in other words, you're teaching what it is that you're living.
Yes.
So, and that's significant. That's all I'm really saying when it comes to communication. Yes. So, no slight on anyone that might have challenges in communication. I too myself have challenges at times in communication. That's a part of just the human experience. Our goal is perfection, but we're imperfect at times in our body.
Right.
Aiming for perfection in how we communicate and how we understand each other as human beings. Does that make sense?
Yes, indeed.
So, you really said a lot as it pertained to the books, and thank you for that. You gave solution, not just in dating apps as well, but also in the Headspace app. But you touched on something very profound: thoughts, thinking. The ability for us to think, as a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. Right? Communication and understanding. And some of the final words that come to mind, even in communication, is community, unity, the common unity. So what are some of the common things you would say we all need to learn and remember as we communicate? Common things that are essential.
As we communicate with one another, first recognizing that we all have imperfections and traumas. So giving people grace is really important. Something that I try to do is listen to the voice behind like the flesh when it comes to people. I feel like there's a lot of judgment that can come with just seeing someone.
Yes.
So, as I speak to all the patients that I do, it's helped me with just like seeing the mind behind the voice, behind the body. I mean, so I think just looking beyond the flesh, like when it comes to speaking with people, helps a lot with like quality, enriching conversations and experiences, because you realize the human between all of us.
Wow. So again, she touched on another kudos to you, the commonality of humanity. So with the commonality of humanity, we're going to speak about that a little bit more after we come from this commercial. I'm Curtis Douglas Ill. I'm here today in the studio with Ariel Eustache Ill. And please come back and build with us after this commercial.
Hello viewers, you are watching Millennium News 24. America and global villages seen to America independence built by immigrants, manufacturers, roads, highways, educations, healthcare, IT, scientists, space business development to all thousands of multimedia and all major social media platforms and news network in America. Millennium News 24, one of truthfully news networks in America and global news organizations. Please watch, follow and subscribe. We are in iOS and Android devices, Roku, Amazon, Apple devices, all smart TV, globally Horizon satellite, social media Millennium News 24, Millennium TV 24. Website www.millenniumnews24.com and www.millenniumtv24.com. Thank you.
Welcome back to Universal Pathway. I'm Curtis Douglas Ill, and I'm here in the studio today with Ariel Eustache Ill. I'm truly honored to be hosting this conversation today because it speaks to our youth. It speaks to couples who are engaged. It speaks to couples who are dating. It speaks to our future in the sense that we have young minds who are part of the commonality of humanity. And who they choose to be their husband or wife, their mate, affects the future of our children. As a community locally, as a village, as a town, as a city, nation, internationally. The nucleus to everything that we're doing on earth is really all about the family structure. And if we think about it, all the great books speak about a garden and life beginning in a garden. So today we have with us a psychotherapist. And Universal Pathway is a show. The intent and the hope is to remind us of the commonality that we all share. The garden really is your mind. Your mind has a feminine component. Your mind has a masculine component. The masculine component of your mind is the directive thought that comes from the great God Allah. In other words, divine thoughts that help us to be better human beings. And the feminine aspect of your mind is your receptivity to it, your ability to receive it, nurture it, and become it. Allow it to be your character. So for us to be speaking to someone who's been placed in a role, to be able to hold that level of thinking and mold the minds of our future is a beautiful thing. So honest to you again, my good sister. Humanity. We have the commonality of humanity. When you look at the current state of humanity as a young lady, one who's now working in the field that you're working in, looking now to be working with your husband in the future, having children, what is your hope towards that experience?
My hope towards having children?
Having children and partaking in just the contribution of what it is to create that family structure. Where do you see it?
I do feel that values do play a significant role in a household. So if a household doesn't have any high value foundation, it will be a weak unit.
Okay.
And so with me and my fiance, we have really strong values. We value family. We value the supreme being, Allah. We value the highest expression of ourselves. We value wellness, nutrition, and also community. And so we're going to teach our children those values because him and I are also aware of the truth within ourselves. we feel that our children have an advantage in knowing that truth very early, because that's something that we've learned later on in our lives. So I think that it's going to be a really awesome journey, and they're going to be very blessed to have us as parents.
That is awesome. And that's kind of what, the hope in this dialogue is speaking to. We're not in any way trying to bash anyone how they're living. Right?
Not at all.
Because we know that many children out there came from broken backgrounds, and they might be thinking, well, this doesn't really speak to my life. The truth of the matter is, I too came from various different challenges as to how I was raised, but to some degree and extent, we have to acknowledge that our parents did the best in how they knew how to do what it is, the cards they were handed.
Exactly.
So this is a knock on any parents out there. But like you said, if we can now learn from others' mistakes, right? If we were to do it all over again, because our children literally is us coming back, doing it all over again.
Right.
Because we're the collection of the memories, whether it be dormant or active, of everyone that preceded us. Right. And as we now pick up the mantle of our ancestors, acknowledging them, in the ever-present now is a connection with the past, present, and future, where energy is all linked. So as we shift and become better, the energy shift and allow all levels of beings at whatever level they are, because we're a human being, to shift as well.
Right.
Does that make sense? So our roles are so significant in many ways. So when we give to this acknowledgement to humanity and the upliftment of fallen humanity, and when we say fallen humanity, the fact that we ourselves don't always see the interconnectedness. We don't always see that higher self within each other.
And one thing that I could say is that before I underwent my spiritual journey, I always felt apart from others. Like that I didn't feel that interconnectedness based on what I was telling myself about people. Like it was always like myself and others. Like I'm this way, they're that way. And so as we've learned, the ego thrives in separation. The ego doesn't feel a part of the collective. So once I started to move away from that and move towards, the commonality that all of us share, it felt a bit more settling, and I felt more open to being me and not like so afraid to be me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So bridges, connecting those wires, seeing those commonality within the word. I'm reminded of the thought where it speaks about, it says that Jesus spoke to the common people, right? Isa, Yahshua spoke to the common people. Now, commonality, common law, common sense, common needs. These are bridges. And for us to get from one state of being to another state of being, just like two separate landmass, we need bridges. And it's always need to be bridging what? Gaps. And that's what communication and understanding is.
Right.
These two words are like powerhouses. They're bridges, right? So as we start to see, in me speaking to you, I'm only speaking to myself. In us speaking to whoever is listening, it's us speaking to ourselves. And that's what I said. There's no knock on what is going on anyone if you're doing your best in what cards you feel you've been dealt with. But like you said, going within, introspective, that's the word you use, right? Being able to what? Reflect. Then you went into what? Meditation. Those are very significant things and tools that she have reminded us of as a society, as human beings, that we can all do. Calming oneself down, sit momentarily. Where is this negative thought knocking on my mind? Right? Because it's about that mental mecca. It's about that mental garden. Because your maker are those thoughts, either positive or negative.
And I could now clearly see the distinction between the ego-based thoughts and like the truth-based thoughts. Like as I've gotten older and just more refined in my understanding of myself, which is ever evolving and ongoing, I noticed that all the negative thoughts that I was having was due to just my ego. And they say your ego is not your amigo, and it's true because it makes you feel separate. The I always tell my patients, like, your sense of self is really just based on ideas, and those ideas are created by you. They're also created by society, but is it really based on the ultimate truth?
Mm-hmm.
And then the ultimate truth can't be put into words. It just is. So there's just like an essence that we all have. So like even when I'm thinking negative thoughts sometimes, and they still creep in, but even when I think that, I'm like, well, that's just my ego speaking. That's not really the truth in me. So now I'm able to check myself more readily when I still feel those negative thoughts coming in.
What you just said, and I hope the audience heard that, it's very vast. Your ego is not your amigo. And the ultimate thought of who we are is so vast.
Yes. It goes beyond.
It's infinite.
Yeah.
It's infinite.
Yeah.
Can't be circumscribed.
Right.
Can't be put in a box.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, to open up that fountain, that's powerful. Mm-hmm. That's like a floodgate open up. The negativity rushing out. Mm-hmm. And one now being able to access a fountain of insight. Mm-hmm. Well said.
Gratitude. I did want to mention another author that helped me with that perspective. And I think we spoke about this offline as well, but Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The Four Agreements. Another life-changing book that he wrote for me was The Voice of Knowledge. And he speaks about like this voice that we have based on knowledge that's influenced by society and influenced on lies. And it just made me have a whole different perspective about where my thoughts even come from. Like they come from society. They come from the European power structure that we're in. Like they're based on fear. It's not really based on the truth. So reading that book also helped me let go of all of those lies as well.
Wow.
And it's a constant letting go.
Wow.
But, it introduced it to me.
Yes. And let me just say this for clarity, because profound, you mentioned just the construct, thought patterns. You mentioned European perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Most might not realize that as indigenous people, melanated people, we cannot live in the mind of someone else. Mm-hmm. You cannot, we need not, you ought not to live on the eyelash of someone else. Because every time they blink, you will fall. And they're the first to know that they're about to blink. Right? Mm-hmm. So we're not Europeans.
Right.
We're not pale-skinned European. Let me specify. And if we're not pale-skinned European, in humanity, every phenotype, every human being have within them a descendant nature. Mm-hmm. And you have the right at birth to have access to the DNA that's connected to that. Mm-hmm. So, and that's all we're saying. Those who are of a certain influence, what benefit them might not benefit others. We are sun-kissed people. We thrive in the sun, right? Others might not.
Right.
They might have to cover up. They might have to put on a lot of sunscreen to protect, because naturally it's not what it is for them.
Right.
So the whole idea of universal pathway is to be inclusive. We love everyone. We're universal in nature. Mm-hmm. It is our goal and our hope that other mindset does not affect other people's mindset. And we can always have what we consider grace and mercy to be able to tolerate the differences and focus on the commonality that we all share on this earth. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, as a psychotherapist, do you have any last words that you would now say to viewers who are listening, who now, for one, might relate to you by just being in a female body, might relate to you by being somebody who's also college educated, master's degree, that can relate to you by just looking at you and hearing your life stories and seeing that you've overcome and adjust? What advice would you just give to just anyone in general, including myself, as we get ready to close out?
Well, what I can say is a lot of answers are found just being still. A lot of the time when we feel discomfort, we are inclined to engage in distractions to make the discomfort go away, but it doesn't really ever go away, at least not in the long term. And so if you ever feel a little bit off or uneasy within yourself, just sit with it, like lean into it, like engage with it, because there's going to be answers in that engagement. And whatever you realize is the case when you do engage it, don't judge yourself for experiencing that, because that's just like that is like one type of feeling or one type of thing. There's like infinite feelings that you could feel. You just have to move past that one feeling. And if it keeps coming up, it's really just your body telling you that this is something for you to get to the root of and to heal. And if you're struggling with doing that, you can read books, you can see a therapist, you can speak to a mentor, but definitely don't just say you deserve to feel that way or blame yourself. Give yourself grace. That's what I say.
Give yourself grace. Again, some power words that jumps out at me. When she said grace, it connects me back to what? The moral, religious point of view. And when I say religion, we're not speaking about dogma. We're not speaking about religion as portrayed by many. We're speaking about universal connection. In other words, realignment to your higher self. That's what we say when Moors speak about religion. It's about realigning with your higher self, the directive thought pattern originally that the great God Allah, whatever you call that source, intended for your life. When he poured into your soul, and your soul now having this body. What is that divine blueprint? It is our goal in life to live according to that. So the various different roles that we now choose to share our portion, whether it be as a psychotherapist, whether it be as somebody who's now engaged, one day married, and partake in what? The beautiful demonstration between man and wife. So every single day in the ever-present now is what? Happy Father's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Because without a father and mother, truth be told, we would not be here. So it's not just one day that we acknowledge these things. So honors to your father, honors to your mother, honors to your brother, honors to you and your fiance for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am Curtis Douglas Ill, and this is Ariel Eustache Ill, and this is Universal Pathways. And we trust we'll see you here. Again, thank you for viewing us. And right here at Millennium News 24 Network, we hope our listening audience has been edified and encouraged to live their best life despite the conditions that they might be facing. Challenges are a part of the fabric of life. We ought to prepare to meet them with wisdom. We or others have passed on to us. Know that we are a global family and need to be better neighbors in our current and future interactions. Thank you to our audience and for viewing and sharing this hour with others as well. Please make sure that you share, like, and subscribe to us on our various different social media platforms. Peace and love to you all. I'm Curtis Douglas Ill, and again, thank you to my host, fellow guest.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.